The chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from 12 different alien species. Crystalline walls stretched upward for hundreds of meters, catching and reflecting light in ways that made the whole room seem to shimmer. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Hyan-Woo Park, the first human to ever address the Galactic Council. He wore a simple black suit, a kind diplomats on Earth had worn for centuries. His hands were bound behind his back with energy restraints that hummed softly. Around him, the council members sat on floating platforms, each shaped to accommodate their unique biology. Some had multiple limbs. Others had no visible eyes. A few existed partially in dimensions humans couldn't fully perceive. Hyan-Woo had prepared for this meeting for 5 years. He had learned 17 alien languages. He had studied every culture represented in the council. He had memorized treaties that were older than human civilization itself. But none of that preparation had included being arrested the moment his ship docked. High Arbiter Veltraxis spoke first. His species, the Luminar, resembled flowing liquid mercury that somehow held a vaguely humanoid shape. His voice came from everywhere at once, translated into English by devices embedded in the chamber walls. Human designated Hyan-Woo Park. You stand accused of representing a species deemed too dangerous for galactic integration. How do you answer this charge? Hyan-Woo kept his voice steady. I answer that you have not given us a chance to prove otherwise. Earth has sent me here in peace. We seek only to join the community of intelligent species and share in the prosperity of the galaxy. Another council member spoke. This one was Rathver of the Kelthani, a species that looked like massive insects with iridescent carapaces. Your species has waged over 15,000 documented wars in the last 3,000 years. Your history is written in blood. You still maintain weapons capable of destroying your own world multiple times over. Why should we believe you come in peace? Because we chose to come, Hyan-Woo replied. We developed faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. We could have remained isolated. We could have built our fleet in secret and emerged as a threat. Instead, we announced ourselves. We requested dialogue. We sent one unarmed diplomat. That was me. Does that sound like the action of a species planning aggression? The council chamber filled with sounds that the translation devices struggled to interpret. Some species were conferring with each other. Others were accessing data feeds, reviewing humanity's history in real time. Hyan-Woo could see holographic displays flickering around some of the platforms, showing scenes from Earth's past, wars, explosions, suffering, but they weren't showing the other parts. The art, the music, the philosophy, the billions of acts of kindness that happened every day. They had already decided what humanity was before he ever arrived. Veltraxis raised one liquid appendage. The chamber fell silent. We have reviewed your species extensively. We have seen what you call progress, but we recognize it as the inevitable march toward galactic disruption. Every warlike species we have encountered has eventually threatened the peace we have maintained for 3,000 years. We will not allow that pattern to repeat. Hyan-Woo felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't going the way he had hoped. Then teach us. Show us your ways. Humanity is capable of learning. Silence, Veltraxis commanded. The Council has reached a decision. Humanity will not be granted access to galactic society. Your species will be quarantined to your home system. Any attempt to leave will be met with force. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Quarantine. Earth had just discovered they weren't alone in the universe. And now they were being told they would never be allowed to join it. But then Veltraxis continued, and everything got worse. Furthermore, to ensure that humanity understands the seriousness of this decree, and to demonstrate the Council's absolute authority over matters of galactic security, Ambassador Hyan-Woo Park will be executed Immediately, the chamber erupted. Even among the council members, there were protests. Rathver stood from his platform. This is not justice. He came unarmed and in peace. This violates every principle we claim to uphold. 2 other council members voiced agreement, but 9 others remained silent or voiced support. The majority had spoken. Haiyan Wu felt his legs go weak. Executed, they were going to kill him for the crime of being human, for representing a species they feared. "You have no right," Haiyan Wu said, and his voice carried across the chamber with surprising strength. "I came here as a diplomat. I am protected by every law of civilized conduct. If you do this, you prove that you are exactly what you accuse us of being. Tyrants who use violence to maintain control." Veltraxis flowed closer, his liquid form shifting to tower over the human. "We are demonstrating necessity. Your death will send a message to your species and to the galaxy. Some threats must be eliminated before they can spread." The energy restraints around Haiyan Wu's wrists suddenly pulled his arms apart, forcing him to his knees. New restraints materialized around his ankles and neck. He couldn't move. "This is being broadcast to all Council worlds," Veltraxis announced. "Let it be known that the Galactic Council does not tolerate threats to our peace." Haiyan Wu looked up at the alien judge. He thought about Earth, about his wife, Somin, who was probably watching this transmission right now, about his daughter, who had just turned 8, about the billions of humans who had hoped he would bring them into a larger community. "You have no idea what you've just done," Haiyan Wu said quietly. His voice was picked up by the chamber's audio systems and amplified. "We came in peace, but you've shown us who you really are. You're not peaceful. You're just weak. You've forgotten what it means to have principles worth fighting for. Earth will remember this day, and so will you." Veltraxis made a gesture with one liquid appendage. The restraint around Haiyan Wu's neck began to constrict. In the last seconds of his life, Haiyan Wu Park didn't think about death. He thought about a protocol he had learned about during his diplomatic training. A contingency plan that every Earth ambassador was required to memorize. A plan that had been created during Earth's darkest days and never deactivated. It was called Extermination Protocol Omega. And his biometric signs had just flatlined, 3 billion kilometers away, aboard the stealth ship Shadow of Earth that had followed Haiyan Wu's diplomatic vessel in secret. Captain Sora Nam watched her displays go red. The ambassador's vital signs had ceased. The automated systems didn't hesitate. They sent an encrypted burst transmission toward Earth at faster-than-light speeds. The message was simple: Protocol Omega activated. Ambassador terminated by hostile action. Sora sat back in her command chair, her face pale. She had hoped she would never have to send those words. Every human in uniform knew what they meant. On Earth, in the unified government headquarters deep beneath the Swiss Alps, alarms began to sound. President Yuna Choi was pulled from a meeting with economic advisors. Admiral Ji Hoon Kong was summoned from the Strategic Defense Command. They gathered in the Situation Room and watched the playback of Haiyan Wu's execution. They watched their friend, their colleague, their representative die on alien soil for the crime of being human. Nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, Admiral Kong broke the silence. "Madam President, the protocol is clear. We need your authorization to proceed." President Choi stared at the frozen image of Haiyan Wu's last moment. Then she looked at the faces around the table. Military commanders, scientists, diplomats, all waiting for her decision. "They wanted to send a message," she said quietly. "I think it's time we sent one back." She placed her palm on the biometric scanner. Authorization granted. Execute Protocol Omega. Around the world, military installations received the same encrypted command. Shipyards that had been building colony vessels began retrofitting them for war. Research facilities that studied alien cultures switched to analyzing alien weaknesses. Every human who had ever served in any military found their reserve status activated. Humanity had tried peace. The galaxy had answered with murder. Now Earth would show them what humans did best. War. The emergency session of the unified Earth government lasted 17 hours. Representatives from every nation on Earth filled the massive assembly hall. They had watched Hyen-Woo Park die. Now they had to decide how to respond. President Una Choi stood at the central podium. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but her voice was firm. The Galactic Council has committed an act of war against humanity. They executed our ambassador without trial, without evidence of wrongdoing, and without mercy. The question before us is not whether we respond, but how. Admiral Ji-Hoon Kong activated a holographic display that filled the air above the assembly. It showed star maps, fleet positions, and weapon specifications. Protocol Omega was designed for exactly this scenario. A first contact situation that turns hostile. We have been preparing for this possibility since we unified Earth 70 years ago. A representative from the Asian Union stood. Are we seriously considering war against an entire galactic civilization? They have 12 species, thousands of worlds, technology we barely understand. They also have no military, Admiral Kong replied. Not a real one. The Council has maintained peace for 3,000 years. They have police forces. They have customs enforcement. But they don't have soldiers. They don't have warships. They don't have weapons designed to kill. Another representative spoke up. And we do? The holographic display changed. It showed ships bristling with weapons, factory stations churning out ammunition, underground bunkers filled with missiles. We never stopped preparing for war, Admiral Kong said. Even after we unified Earth, even after we eliminated our internal conflicts, we kept our weapons. We kept our soldiers trained, because we remembered our history. We knew that peace was something you had to be strong enough to defend. Dr. Minho Lee, Earth's chief weapons researcher, took the podium. He was a small man with thick glasses and hands that trembled slightly as he manipulated the holographic controls. For the past 50 years, we have been developing weapons in secret. We didn't know if we would ever need them, but we prepared anyway. Let me show you what we have. The display shifted to show a cylindrical object accelerating through space. This is a relativistic kinetic weapon. It's a simple concept. Accelerate a dense object to 99% of light speed and aim it at a target. The impact releases energy equivalent to multiple nuclear weapons. The Council has never needed to develop defenses against such weapons because nobody has used them for millennia. The next image showed swarms of tiny machines, self-replicating war drones. They can reproduce using raw materials from asteroids. 1 becomes 10. 10 becomes 100. 100 becomes 1,000. Within weeks, we can field a fleet that outnumbers the Council's entire civilian space infrastructure. Antimatter weapons, Minho continued, showing another schematic. The Council uses antimatter for fuel, but they regulate it strictly. We have been manufacturing it in quantities they would consider insane. 1 antimatter warhead can sterilize a planet. A representative from the African Federation stood, her face pale. You're talking about genocide. The room fell silent. President Choi stepped forward. Yes, that is exactly what Protocol Omega authorizes. The complete elimination of any species or civilization that poses an existential threat to humanity. But that makes us monsters. Someone shouted from the back. It makes us survivors, Admiral Kong shot back. They killed Hyen-Woo to send a message about their authority. If we don't respond, we tell the galaxy that humans can be killed without consequence. We become prey. President Choi raised her hand for silence. I want to be clear about something. I am not ordering the extinction of 12 species because they made a mistake, but I am authorizing military action to ensure they can never threaten Earth again. The Council's infrastructure will be destroyed. Their ability to enforce their will on others will be eliminated, and those responsible for Hyan-Wu's death will face justice. The vote was called. It was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Earth would go to war. In the Strategic Command Center beneath Moscow. Fleet Commander Tae-Young Kim began the mobilization. Every ship in Earth's defensive fleet received new orders. Colony vessels were recalled and retrofitted with weapons. Mining ships became delivery platforms for kinetic weapons. Even civilian transports were equipped with basic armaments. Captain Sora Nam received her orders aboard the Silent Vengeance. Her ship was Earth's most advanced stealth vessel, designed to be completely invisible to the Council's sensors. Her mission was simple: destroy the Luminar communication relay network. Without it, the Council's species couldn't coordinate their response. Sora looked at her crew. 35 men and women who had trained their entire lives for combat that they hoped would never come. Now it was here. Listen up, she said, her voice carrying through the ship's intercom. In 6 hours, we will strike the first blow in a war that nobody wanted, but that we will finish. The Council thinks they can kill us and face no consequences. We are going to prove them wrong. Check your stations. Verify your weapons. And remember why we're doing this. On the main viewer, a photo appeared. Hyan-Wu Park, smiling at the camera, standing with his wife and daughter. The image had been taken the day before he left for the Council station. He went to them in peace, Sora said quietly. He trusted them to be civilized. They murdered him for it. We will not make that mistake. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Jiwon An worked in her laboratory at the Seoul Institute for Xenobiology. She had been studying the Council species for years, learning everything she could about their biology, their psychology, their cultures. Now her research was being weaponized. She looked at the data on her screens. Genetic markers that could be targeted. Biological vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Ways to kill specific alien species while leaving others untouched. Her hands shook as she compiled the reports. This wasn't why she became a scientist. She had wanted to learn about alien life, to understand it, maybe even to befriend it someday. Now she was designing ways to exterminate it. There was a knock on her laboratory door. A military officer entered, a young woman with the rank insignia of a lieutenant. Dr. An? I'm Lieutenant Minji Co. I've been assigned to your detail. I don't need a bodyguard, Jiwon said. I'm not here to guard you. I'm here to deliver your findings to the weapons development teams. And to make sure you're okay. Jiwon laughed bitterly. Okay? I'm creating biological weapons that could kill billions. How could I possibly be okay with that? Minji sat down across from her. My brother was on Hyan-Wu Park's security team. He watched the ambassador die and couldn't do anything to stop it. Now he's volunteering for the first wave assault forces. Everyone is dealing with this in their own way. By becoming what we're fighting against? By making sure it never happens again, Minji corrected. The Council killed Hyan-Wu because they could. Because they thought we were too weak to matter. We're proving them wrong. Jiwon looked back at her screens. There has to be another way. If you find it, please tell someone, Minji said. But until then, we need your research. Across the solar system, humanity's industrial capacity shifted into total war production. Asteroid mining operations began extracting metals at unprecedented rates. Orbital factories that had built civilian goods started manufacturing weapons. On Luna, the massive railgun installation that had been designed for launching cargo into deep space was recalibrated to fire kinetic weapons at galactic targets. In the unified government headquarters, President Choi met with her advisors. On the screens around them, the mobilization reports scrolled past. Numbers that represented ships, weapons, soldiers. Each number was a life being put at risk. Each number was a choice to embrace violence. Madam President, one advisor said carefully, the Council is attempting to make contact. They want to negotiate. Ignore them, Choi said flatly. They're saying the execution was a mistake. That High Arbiter Veltraxis exceeded his authority. They can say whatever they want. Hien Wu is still dead. And they need to understand that you don't murder human ambassadors and then ask for talks. Admiral Kong entered the room. Madam President, Captain Sora Nam reports that the Silent Vengeance is in position. She requests permission to begin the attack. President Choi stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of the city. Billions of humans going about their lives, most of them not yet understanding how much everything had changed. Hien Wu believed in peace, she said softly. He believed that we could join the galaxy as partners. He died for that belief. She turned back to face Admiral Kong. But belief doesn't protect you from those who see kindness as weakness. The Council needs to learn that humanity will not be their victims. Give Captain Sora the order. Begin the attack. The command was encrypted and transmitted at faster-than-light speeds. 3 billion kilometers away, Captain Sora Nam received it. Weapons hot, she ordered. Target acquired. Firing solution locked. The Silent Vengeance dropped out of stealth mode for exactly 3 seconds. Its main cannon fired once. A beam of coherent antimatter particles crossed the distance to the luminar relay station in an instant. The station, which had coordinated communications for a quarter of the galaxy for over 1,000 years, ceased to exist. 300 luminar technicians died before they even knew. They were under attack. Earth had sent its message. The war had begun. The luminar homeworld hung in space like a blue-green jewel. It had been at peace for 3,000 years. Its billion inhabitants had never known war. They spent their lives in pursuit of art, science, and philosophy. The concept of military defense was something they studied as ancient history. When their primary orbital relay station simply vanished from existence, they didn't immediately understand what had happened. Equipment malfunctions were rare but possible. Accidents could occur. It took 17 minutes for them to realize the truth. They were under attack. Captain Sora Nam watched the chaos unfold through her ship's sensors. The Silent Vengeance had jumped away immediately after firing, but she had left sensor drones behind to observe. What she saw would have been funny if it wasn't so tragic. The Luminar Defense Forces, such as they were, didn't even know where to point their weapons. They had sensors designed to track civilian traffic and scan for environmental hazards. They had nothing that could detect a ship using military-grade stealth technology. Secondary targets acquired, her weapons officer reported. 17 relay substations in orbit. 23 fuel processing centers. 14 defense platforms that haven't been activated in 800 years. Fire at will, Sora ordered. But avoid civilian population centers. We're here to break their infrastructure, not massacre innocents. The Silent Vengeance began its work. Each shot was precise, calculated. Relay stations exploded silently in the vacuum of space. Fuel depots ruptured, venting their contents into the void. The ancient defense platforms, their weapon systems so outdated they might as well have been museum pieces, were destroyed before they could even power up their shields. Within an hour, the Luminar civilization had been effectively blinded. They could no longer communicate with their colonies. They couldn't coordinate with the other Council species. Their entire society, which had been built on the assumption of permanent peace, discovered what it felt like to be helpless. On the surface, High Arbiter Veltraxus received fragmented reports. His liquid form rippled with what might have been fear or rage. The humans were supposed to be confined to their system. They were supposed to be primitive warmongers who lacked the technology for real space combat. Instead, they had struck with a precision and ferocity that he couldn't comprehend. This wasn't random violence. This was surgical, planned, strategic. He tried to send a message to the Council, to warn them, to coordinate a response. But the communication networks were gone. He was alone. Halfway across the galaxy, Commander Do-Yun Park led a different kind of strike. His target was the Krillian fuel processing stations, massive orbital facilities that refined the exotic matter used to power faster than light drives. Without these stations, the Council's vast civilian fleet would be stranded. Do-Yun's task force consisted of 6 frigates, fast and heavily armed. They dropped out of FTL space right in the middle of the Krillian system, weapons already hot. "Remember the plan," Do-Yun said over the command channel. "We hit the processing stations, not the habitats. We're not here to kill civilians. We're here to strand them." The Krillian were insectoid beings who had achieved spaceflight through collective intelligence. They thought in swarms, their individual minds linking together to form greater consciousness. When the human ships appeared, their collective mind recoiled in confusion. This wasn't supposed to be possible. The protocols said there would be warnings, negotiations, time to respond. But humans didn't follow protocols that had been written. By species who had forgotten what war meant, the frigates opened fire. Missiles streaked across the void, each one guided by eye systems more sophisticated than anything the Council had seen. The processing stations, enormous structures the size of small cities, began to break apart. Explosions blossomed in chains, each one carefully calculated to destroy equipment without endangering the nearby habitation stations. One Krillian defense ship tried to respond. It was a customs vessel designed to inspect cargo and chase down smugglers. Against a human frigate, it lasted less than 30 seconds. The frigate's point defense systems shot it apart before it could even get within weapons range. "All targets destroyed," one of Do-Yun's officers reported. "No human casualties." Krillian casualties estimated at less than 100, all military personnel. Do-Yun nodded, but he felt no satisfaction. 100 beings dead. 100 lives ended because their leaders had made a terrible choice. He thought about Hyan-Woo Park, a man he had never met but whose name he shared. The ambassador had tried to prevent this. He had offered peace and been murdered for it. "Set course for the secondary objectives," Do-Yun ordered. "We have 6 more systems to hit before we return to Earth." Back at the Unified Government headquarters, Admiral Ji-Hoon Kang watched the battle reports come in. Every screen in the command center showed different engagements. Human forces were striking simultaneously at 50 different targets across the galaxy. The Council's infrastructure was being systematically dismantled. "Casualties?" President Choi asked. "Minimal on our side," Kang replied. 0 human deaths so far. 17 wounded, all injuries from equipment malfunctions rather than enemy fire. Council casualties are harder to estimate, but our forces are following the rules of engagement. Military targets only. Avoid civilian populations where possible. And the Council's response? Confused, disorganized. They're trying to coordinate, but without their communication networks, they're operating blind. Some species are attempting to mount defenses, but they don't have the training or equipment. It's like watching children try to fight trained soldiers. President Choi sat down heavily. "This is too easy. Is that a problem?" "It means they really were peaceful. They really had built a society without war. And we're destroying it." Kang leaned against the console. "They executed our ambassador, Madam President. They chose this. I know. But that doesn't mean I have to feel good about it. On Earth, Dr. Jiwan An watched the same reports in her laboratory. She had been working non-stop, analyzing the data coming back from the strikes. What she was learning disturbed her. The Council species weren't just unprepared for war. They were incapable of it. Centuries of genetic modification and cultural engineering had literally removed aggression from their biology. The Luminar couldn't feel anger. The Krillian couldn't conceive of individual violence. The other species were similar, each one shaped by their philosophy of peace into beings that couldn't truly fight back. They're helpless. She said to Lieutenant Minji CO, who had become a constant presence in her lab, "We're not fighting soldiers. We're attacking beings who literally cannot understand what we're doing to them. Does that change anything?" Minji asked. Jiwan pulled up another report. 3 council species voted against executing Haiyan Wu. The Kelthani, the Yef, and the Vordrani. They tried to offer him asylum. They were overruled by the majority. So some of them tried to do the right thing. And now they're being punished along with the ones who didn't. Our forces hit the Kelthani shipyards this morning. 500 Kelthani died. They were innocent. Minji was quiet for a moment. "I'll forward your findings to command. Maybe they can adjust the targeting. Will it matter? We're already at war. It matters to the 500 Kelthani who are still alive because we haven't hit their other facilities yet. In orbit around a moon called Talaxis, Lieutenant Minji's brother, Corporal Junho CO, led a ground assault team. Their target was a Council weapons research facility, one of the few places the Council actually studied military technology. Even if only as historical curiosity, the team dropped from orbit in stealth pods, landing a kilometer from the facility. Junho checked his squad's status. 12 soldiers, all volunteers, all trained for combat in hostile environments. "Remember," he said over the squad channel, "this is a research facility. There will be scientists inside, not soldiers. We secure the site, we download their data, and we get out. No unnecessary casualties." They moved through the alien landscape in tactical formation. The facility appeared on their helmet displays, outlined in infrared. No defenses. No guards. Just a building full of researchers who probably didn't even know Earth existed until a week ago. The breach was almost too easy. The facility's security was designed to keep people out during civilian emergencies, not to withstand a military assault. Within minutes, Junho's team had secured the main laboratory dot inside. They found a dozen researchers. They were Yeth, beings that looked like walking crystal formations that somehow housed organic intelligence within their structure. When the humans entered, weapons raised, the Yeth simply stood there. Not because they were brave, but because they literally didn't understand what was happening. One of them stepped forward, its crystalline body refracting the harsh light from the soldiers' weapons. "Are you humans?" It asked in perfect English, translated by the facility's universal systems. "Yes," Junho replied. "We voted against the execution. Please believe us. We wanted to welcome you." Junho felt something twist in his chest. These beings had tried to help Haiyan Wu, and now his team was raiding their facility, terrifying them, treating them like enemies. "Download everything," he ordered his team, "and secure these researchers." "We're taking them with us, sir?" one of his soldiers questioned. "They're coming with us. If command wants to court-martial me for it, they can. But I'm not leaving them here to be targeted by the next strike." Back on the Silent Vengeance, Captain Sora Nam received new orders. High Arbiter Vel Traxis was attempting to contact Earth, offering to negotiate. President Choi had refused, but the council leader was persistent. The new orders were clear. Eliminate the leadership. Starting with Vel Traxis himself, Sora looked at the targeting data. The High Arbiter's location had been identified. He was in a government facility on the lunar homeworld, surrounded by thousands of civilians. Can we get a clean shot? She asked her weapons officer. Negative. The facility is in the middle of their capital city. Any weapon powerful enough to penetrate the building's shields will cause massive collateral damage. Sora thought about it. She thought about Hyanwu Park, executed in front of the entire galaxy. She thought about the orders she had been given. She thought about what it would mean to become the kind of person who fired weapons into civilian populations. Log my decision, she said. Target is declined due to excessive civilian risk. Veltraxis remains alive, but contained. Moving to secondary objectives. Her executive officer looked at her with something like relief. Aye, Captain. Across the galaxy, humanity's forces continued their systematic dismantling of the Council's infrastructure. And with each strike, each destroyed station, each disabled facility, the same pattern emerged. The humans were winning. But they were also learning something that might change everything. The Council wasn't evil. They were just wrong. And maybe, just maybe, there was another way to end this war. 3 months into the war, the galaxy looked very different. The Galactic Council's carefully maintained infrastructure lay in ruins. Communication networks that had connected thousands of worlds were now silent. Fuel stations that had powered interstellar commerce for centuries floated as debris. The peace that had lasted 3 millennia was shattered. Admiral Ji-Hoon Kong stood in the command center, watching the strategic displays. Blue markers showed human fleet positions. Red markers showed what remained of Council military assets. There were far more blue markers than red ones. Status report, he ordered. Fleet Commander Tae-Young Kim pulled up the latest data. We've eliminated 93% of the Council's military capability. 17 species have lost their primary orbital defenses. 8 species have formally surrendered and requested Earth's protection. 4 species are attempting to remain neutral. And the 3 who voted against executing Hyanwu, the Kelthani, Yeth, and Vordrani, have all tried to establish direct communication with us. They want separate peace negotiations. Kong nodded slowly. Forward their requests to President Choi. What about the species still actively resisting? The Luminar are trying to mount a counteroffensive, but they lack the resources. The Krillian have retreated to their core systems and are attempting to build defensive positions. The others are scattered and disorganized. On one screen, footage played from a recent engagement. The human battleship Retribution, under the command of Captain Hyen Choi, had engaged 3 Council defense fleets simultaneously. The battle, if it could be called that, had lasted less than 20 minutes. The Council ships had been outmaneuvered, outgunned, and outhawed at every turn. Captain Hyen had become something of a legend. His ship had fought in 12 major engagements without taking serious damage. The Council species had started calling him the Ghost because his ship seemed to appear and disappear at will, striking from impossible angles. But Kong saw the reports that didn't make the news. Hyen was pushing himself too hard. His crew was exhausted. The man was running on stimulants and rage, trying to avenge Hyanwu's death over and over again by destroying anything Council-related he could find. Send orders to Captain Hyen, Kong said. He's to return to Earth for refit and crew rotation. If he refuses, relieve him of command. A junior officer looked up nervously. Sir, with respect, Captain Hyen won't respond well to that. I know. Do it anyway. Across the command center, another alert sounded. Lieutenant Minji Seo rushed over, her face pale. Admiral, we have an emergency broadcast from the Council. It's being sent on every frequency, in every language, including English. Put it through. The central display flickered. High Arbiter Veltraxis appeared, his liquid form shimmer with what might have been desperation. Behind him, other council members were visible, their various alien forms clustered together in what looked like a bunker. "This message is directed to the human government," Veltraxus said. His voice, usually so confident and commanding, now sounded hollow. "We acknowledge that the execution of Ambassador Hyen-Woo Park was an error in judgment. We acknowledge that our response to humanity's emergence was based on fear rather than wisdom. We formally request negotiations to end this conflict." Admiral Kang waited for more, but that was it. The transmission ended. "They're scared," Taeyong said quietly. "They should be," Kang replied. "Get this to President Choi immediately." In President Choi's office, the message played 3 times. She sat behind her desk, her hands folded, her face unreadable. Finally, she spoke. "Ignore it, Madam President?" One of her advisors questioned. "They want to negotiate now because they're losing." Where was their wisdom when they executed Hyen-Woo? Where was their acknowledgement of error when they broadcast his death as a demonstration of their power? They don't get to say sorry and expect us to stop. "But Madam President, we've achieved our military objectives. Their infrastructure is destroyed. They can't threaten us anymore." "No," Choi said firmly. "Not yet. They need to understand the cost of what they did. They need to face consequences that will ensure this never happens again." What President Choi didn't know was that the Council was planning something desperate. In a hidden facility deep underground on the Luminar homeworld. A team of their most brilliant scientists worked on a weapon they had sworn they would never use again. It was an ancient device from their species' early days in space, before they had evolved beyond war. It was a planet killer. The weapon used principles of physics the humans hadn't even discovered yet. It could destabilize a planet's core, causing it to tear itself apart from within. It was the ultimate deterrent, something so terrible that its very existence had helped push the Luminar toward their philosophy of peace. Faced with extinction, they prepared to use it. The target was obvious. If they couldn't defeat humanity's fleet, they would strike at humanity's heart. They would destroy Earth. On Earth, at the Orbital Defense Network Command Center, Specialist Sun-Hee Lim was monitoring long-range sensors. She was looking for Council fleet movements, potential counterattacks, anything that might threaten human forces. What she found instead made her blood run cold. "Admiral Kang," she called out, her voice cracking with urgency. "Sir, I'm detecting an energy signature near the outer rim of the solar system. It just dropped out of FTL space. Identify it." Sun-Hee's fingers flew across her console. "It's not a ship. It's too small. But the energy readings are massive." "Sir, I think it's a weapon." Alarms began blaring across the defense network. Every sensor in the solar system focused on the anomaly. What they found confirmed Sun-Hee's worst fears. "It's heading for Earth," she reported. "Current velocity suggests impact in 72 minutes. Sir, based on the energy signature, if that thing hits us, it will crack the planet open." Admiral Kang didn't hesitate. Code red across all defenses. "Get me every ship, every weapon, every asset we have between Earth and that object. And someone get President Choi on the line. Now." The next hour was the most desperate in human history. Every orbital defense platform, every military ship in the solar system, every weapon that could be brought to bear was aimed at the incoming weapon. The first wave of missiles launched when the object was still 2 million kilometers out. Antimatter warheads, powerful enough to vaporize asteroids, detonated in precise patterns designed to destroy or deflect the weapon. The explosions lit up space like a string of new suns. When the light faded, the weapon was still there, its shields absorbing the impacts. "It's not working," Sun-Hee reported, her voice tight with fear. "The shields are regenerating faster than we can damage them." Hit it with everything, Kang ordered. I don't care about collateral damage. I don't care about saving ammunition for later. Stop that weapon or Earth dies. Railguns fired. Laser batteries unleashed their full power. Kinetic weapons accelerated to relativistic speeds, slammed into the target. The combined firepower of humanity's entire defensive network focused on a single point in space, and slowly, impossibly, it began to work. The weapon's shields flickered. Cracks appeared in its structure. The energy signature began to destabilize. Keep firing. Kang shouted. Don't let up. With 30 minutes to impact, the weapon finally broke apart. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface. A brief new star that flared and faded in the night sky. Earth had survived. Barely in the command center, there was no celebration. Sun-Hee sat at her console, shaking. Admiral Kang gripped the edge of a table so hard his knuckles went white. They had come within minutes of extinction. President Choi arrived at the command center 20 minutes later. She had watched the battle from her office, unable to do anything but wait. Now she looked at the data, at the weapon fragments still drifting in space, at the proof of what the Council had tried to do. They tried to genocide us, she said quietly. Yes, Madam President. The peaceful, civilized Galactic Council tried to destroy Earth, to kill 8 billion humans, to commit the very act they accused us of being capable of. Yes, Choi was silent for a long time. Then she looked up at Admiral Kang. Recall all our forces. I want every ship back in defensive positions around Earth, and I want a meeting with the senior staff. All of them. Now. 2 hours later, the meeting began. Military commanders, scientists, diplomats, all gathered in the Situation Room. President Choi stood at the head of the table. The Council just tried to destroy Earth, she said without preamble. They failed, but the attempt was made. This changes everything. It proves they're just as capable of violence as we are, Admiral Kang said. No, Dr. Jiwan An interrupted. Everyone turned to look at her. She had been invited to the meeting as the government's leading expert on Council species psychology. It proves they're desperate. It proves they're terrified. And it proves that when you back any species into a corner, even the most peaceful one, they will lash out. What's your point? Kang asked. My point is that we've become exactly what they feared. We've proven to them that humans are destructive, violent, and merciless. By responding to one death with a war that has killed millions, we've justified every fear they had about us. They executed our ambassador, and we destroyed their civilization. At what point does revenge become the same thing we're fighting against? The room erupted in argument. Some sided with Jiwan, arguing that humanity had gone too far. Others defended the war, saying the Council had left them no choice. President Choi let them argue for several minutes. Then she raised her hand for silence. Dr. An, you've been researching the Council species. Tell me honestly, can they be trusted? Jiwan took a breath. Not the way they are now. They're broken, scattered, terrified. But the 3 species who voted against executing Hyanwu, they tried to do the right thing. They failed, but they tried. That means something. And the ones who voted for his execution? They made a terrible mistake. But they made it out of fear, not evil. If we teach them to fear us even more, we guarantee this happens again. If we show them there's another way, maybe we can build something better. Choi looked around the table. Options? Fleet Commander Taeyong Kim spoke up. We can finish the war. Eliminate their capacity to build weapons entirely. Occupy their core systems. Ensure they can never threaten us again. That's slavery, Jiwan protested. That's survival, Taeyong countered. Admiral Kang cleared his throat. Or we can propose new terms. not surrender, not occupation. A new structure for galactic governance. One where humanity has an equal voice and the military strength to ensure we're never threatened again. President Choi sat down slowly. She thought about Hyun-woo Park, who had believed in peace. She thought about the 8 billion people on Earth who had almost died. She thought about the millions of Council species members who had died in a war they didn't understand. "We're at a crossroads," she said. "We can finish this war through extermination. We can rule through fear. Or we can try something different. Something that honors what Hyun-woo died believing in." She looked at each person in the room. "Tomorrow, I will address the Galactic Council, and I will offer them a choice." 1 year after Ambassador Hyun-woo Park's execution, President Yoon Choi stood before what remained of the Galactic Council. The meeting was held on neutral ground, a small station that had survived the war. Security was heavy on both sides. Though the human soldiers outnumbered the council guards by 10 to 1, the council members looked different now. Less confident. Less certain. High Arbiter Veltraxis was there, his liquid form seeming dimmer than before. Beside him sat representatives from the other species, some of whom had never expected to see another day after Earth's forces began their systematic destruction of Council infrastructure. Choi wore a simple black suit, the same style Hyun-woo had worn on his last day. It was a deliberate choice, a reminder of why they were all here. 1 year ago, she began, her voice carried to every corner of the station by translation systems. You executed our ambassador. You killed him to send a message. You wanted to show the galaxy that the Council's authority was absolute, that you could judge entire species and enforce your decisions without question. She paused, looking at each council member in turn. We sent our own message. We showed you what humanity does to those who murder our people. We destroyed your infrastructure. We dismantled your authority. We proved that your 3,000 years of peace existed only because nobody had challenged you. The moment you faced a real threat, you tried to destroy an entire planet full of innocent people. Veltraxis tried to speak, but Choi raised her hand. I'm not finished. We stand here today at a crossroads. Earth has the military capability to finish what we started. We can eliminate every Council species' ability to build weapons, to defend themselves, to exist as anything other than subjects to human authority. We can rule this galaxy through fear and force. That is one option. She took a datapad from her aide and held it up. Or we can try something different. This document is a proposal for what we call the new Galactic Compact. It dissolves the old Council structure and replaces it with a federation where all species have equal representation. No species has the authority to execute envoys. No species has the power to declare genocide. And any species that tries will face immediate military response. Led by Earth's fleet. The Council chamber erupted in voices. Some translated into human hearing range, others existing in frequencies humans couldn't perceive. Choi waited for the noise to settle. I know what you're thinking. Why should you trust us? We just spent a year destroying everything you built. But ask yourselves this. If we wanted to exterminate you, would you still be alive? Every human military commander had orders to avoid civilian casualties where possible. Every strike was calculated to destroy infrastructure, not populations. We could have killed billions. We killed thousands. Rathver of the Kelfani stood. His insectoid form clicked and hummed as he spoke. And if we refuse your proposal? What then? Then we leave, Choi said simply. We return to Earth. We seal our borders. And the next time you try to execute a human, or threaten our people, or demonstrate your authority over us, we come back. And we finish the job. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, a new voice spoke. It was Tresh Kala, a young Luminar scientist who had been part of the team that tried to build the planet-killer weapon. She had been captured during a human raid and had spent months in Earth custody, learning about humanity. "I have a question," she said, her liquid form rippling with nervousness. "Why offer us this choice at all? You've won. You have the power. Why not simply take control?" Choi smiled sadly. Because a human named Hyan-Woo Park believed that civilizations should be judged by their choices, not their capabilities. He believed that peace was something you built together, not something you imposed. He died for that belief. And if we destroy you now, we prove that his belief was wrong. We prove that the only thing that matters is power. She looked directly at Treshkala. "We're offering you this choice because we want to prove that he was right, that there is another way. But make no mistake, this is the only time we make this offer. Accept it or reject it, but you won't get another chance." The council members conferred among themselves. The debate lasted 3 hours. Some species wanted to reject the proposal to maintain some semblance of their old authority. Others, particularly the 3 who had voted against Hyan-Woo's execution, argued for acceptance. In the end, the vote was unanimous. The council accepted the new galactic compact. Back on Earth, the reaction was mixed. Admiral Ji-Hoon Kong watched the vote from the command center, his face unreadable. "They agreed," Fleet Commander Taeyong Kim said. "It's over, is it?" Kong asked. "Or have we just planted the seeds for the next war?" Dr. Ji-Won An, who had been working tirelessly to find a peaceful solution, allowed herself a small smile. "Maybe, but at least this time, we're trying to build something instead of just destroying." Not everyone was happy. Captain Hyen Choi, whose battleship Retribution had become a symbol of human military might, resigned his commission in protest. "They tried to kill us all," he said in his resignation statement, "and we're giving them another chance. Hyan-Woo's death deserved more than this." But others saw it differently. Lieutenant Minji Seo, who had witnessed both the violence of war and the humanity of individual council members, volunteered to be part of the first diplomatic course to the Reformed Council. "Someone has to make sure the peace actually works," she said. Captain Sora Nam, whose first strike had begun the war, was offered command of the new Galactic Defense Fleet. Her job would be to patrol the galaxy, ensuring no species violated the compact. She accepted, but with conditions. "I'll protect the peace," she told President Choi, "but I'll never forget why we fought. The moment any species threatens humanity again, I won't wait for orders. I'll act." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Choi replied. The implementation of the new Galactic Compact took months. The old council systems had to be dismantled. New governmental structures had to be built. And most importantly, trust had to be established between species that had been at war. Admiral Kang took on a new role. He established the Galactic Defense Academy, located on a moon in neutral space. Its purpose was to train officers from all species in military strategy, tactics, and ethics. The philosophy was simple. If every species understood how to defend itself, and understood the consequences of aggression, maybe war could be avoided. The first class included humans, Kelfani, Luminar, and representatives from 6 other species. They learned together. They trained together. And slowly, they began to trust each other. Dr. Ji-Won An became Earth's first ambassador to the new Galactic Federation. She worked alongside Treshkala and other council scientists to rebuild the infrastructure that had been destroyed. But this time, they built it with redundancy, with safeguards, with the understanding that peace was something that had to be actively maintained. "Tell me about Hyan-Woo Park," Treshkala asked one day as they reviewed construction plans for a new communication network. Ji-Won pulled up a photo on her data pad. Hyan-Woo with his family, smiling, hopeful. He was a dreamer. He believed that we could be better than our worst instincts. That understanding could triumph over fear. Was he right? I don't know yet. Ask me in 100 years. On Axiom Prime, the station where Hyan Wu had been executed, a memorial was erected. It was a simple structure, made of materials from Earth, the lunar homeworld, and 10 other council worlds. The inscription was written in every known language. Ambassador Hyan Wu Park. He came in peace. We answered in war. Now we must build the peace he died believing in. Every species sent representatives to the dedication ceremony. High Arbiter Veltraxis was there, no longer holding authority, but attending as a private citizen. He had been tried under the new Compact's first court and found guilty of murder. His sentence was life imprisonment, but he was allowed to attend the memorial first dot as he stood before the monument. His liquid form seemed to sag with the weight of guilt. I made a terrible choice, he said quietly. I was afraid, and I let that fear drive me to do something unforgivable. I cannot undo what I did, but I can witness what came from it, both the horror and the hope. President Choi stood nearby. She had every reason to hate this being who had ordered her friend's death. But as she watched Veltraxis grieve, she realized that hate wouldn't build the future Hyan Wu had dreamed of. You were wrong, she said to him. But you're not the only one who made mistakes. We all have to do better. The memorial became a gathering place for those who wanted to remember not just the war, but the promise of what could come after it. Human soldiers who had lost friends in the conflict stood beside council members who had lost their homes. Together they mourned. Together they hoped. 1 year became 5. 5 became 10. The Galactic Federation grew stronger. New species joined, attracted by the promise of protection and genuine equality. Trade resumed. Science flourished. Culture was exchanged. There were tensions, of course. Some species still feared humanity. Some humans still didn't trust the council species. Arguments happened. Disputes arose. But now there were systems in place to handle them. Courts instead of executions. Negotiations instead of war. Captain Soranam's patrol fleet responded to 17 potential conflicts in the first decade. Each time, they arrived with overwhelming force. Each time, they managed to defuse the situation without firing a shot. The message was clear. The galaxy had teeth now, and it would use them if necessary, but it preferred not to. Commander Do-Yeon Park, who had destroyed the Krillian fuel stations in the war's early days, now worked at one of the new processing facilities. Humans and Krillian worked side by side, rebuilding what had been destroyed. It was slow work, requiring patience and forgiveness on both sides. Why do you do this? A Krillian worker asked him one day. You destroyed our stations. Why help rebuild them? Because destroying was easy, Do-Yeon replied. Building is harder, and it's what Hyan Wu would have wanted. Corporal Junho Seo, who had captured Yeth researchers during a raid, maintained contact with them. They exchanged letters, discussing science, philosophy, and the nature of violence. The Yeth told him about their culture before the war. Junho told them about Earth's history, about how humans had almost destroyed themselves before learning to cooperate. Your species learned this lesson over centuries, one Yeth researcher wrote. We had to learn it in a year. I think your way was less painful. Both ways hurt, Junho replied. But at least we learned. Specialist Son-Hee Lim, who had detected the planet-killer weapon and helped coordinate its destruction, became an instructor at the Defense Academy. She taught young officers from every species about threat detection, crisis response, and the importance of staying calm under pressure. Remember, she told her students, the goal is never to fight. The goal is to be so prepared to fight that nobody wants to test you. That's the lesson humanity taught us all. 20 years after the war, a human colony ship departed Earth alongside vessels from the Kalthani, Luminar, and Vordrani. They were heading into unexplored space, beyond the edge of known civilization. The mission was dangerous, but they faced it together. On the lead ship, Captain Minji Seo looked at her diverse crew. Humans, aliens, all working toward a common goal. "This is what it should have been from the beginning," she said. Her first officer, a Luminar named Kethvos, rippled in agreement. "Perhaps it needed to happen this way. Perhaps we all needed to see the worst in ourselves before we could build something better." "Maybe," Minji allowed. "Or maybe we just got lucky. Either way, we have a chance now. Let's not waste it." In the unified government headquarters on Earth, now the capital of the Galactic Federation, President Choi had been replaced by a new leader. She attended the changing of power ceremony, but no longer held office. Her work was done. She visited Haiyan Wu's family before she left politics. His daughter was grown now, a diplomat herself, following in her father's footsteps. His wife had remarried and found happiness again. "Do you think he would be proud?" Soman asked as they sat in her garden, watching the sunset. "I think he would be satisfied," Choi replied. "Not entirely happy with how we got here, but satisfied with where we are. He always said that peace was a choice you had to make every day. He was right, and we're still making that choice. Every day, every species, every person." As the sun set on Earth, similar sunsets were happening on thousands of worlds across the galaxy. Species that had almost destroyed each other were now building a shared future. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was possible. And that was what Haiyan Wu Park had died believing in, the possibility of something better. Humanity had proven they were dangerous when threatened. They had shown the galaxy what humans did to those who harmed them. They had demonstrated military superiority that would never be forgotten. But they had also proven something else. They had shown that strength didn't have to mean cruelty. That victory didn't require extermination. That the most powerful choice was the choice to show mercy, when vengeance would be easier. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. But they also didn't have to fear them, because humans had chosen to be protectors rather than conquerors, judges rather than executioners, partners rather than masters. It wasn't the peace that Haiyan Wu had hoped to build, but it was a peace built in his name, on his ideals, strengthened by the sacrifice he had made. And in the end, perhaps that was enough.